So yesterday, um, Medvedev of Russia, the former president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, he made a statement, and it was concerning the Kharkiv rout that happened the last few days, where the United States had been sending billions of dollars in military equipment to Ukraine to fight against the Russian invasion, and the Russians basically got chased out of Kharkiv and other places. So the government in Russia is very angry right now. So this particular article is on the Odessa Journal, and the title is Prologue to the Third World War. Medvedev responded to security guarantees for Ukraine. In his telegram, the former president of the Russian Federation began to threaten NATO and declares that no one will give guarantees to the Ukrainian Nazis. The Kiev Camarilla gave birth to a project of security guarantees, which are a prologue to the Third World War. You know, everybody's emergency lights should be on right now. But what does everybody do? They get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, take their shower, shave, whatever, eat breakfast, and go to work. That's what they do. Why? Why don't they stop and say, hey, hold on a minute here. We are about to get annihilated. Let's get some emergency supplies. Let's look at the scripture and find out what to do. No, they're not going to do that. They're not doing it. Why? I'll tell you why. Because you see, folks, the governments, and I'll take United States government as an example, but many governments around the world, especially in Western civilization, have conditioned the populace in this way. You see, in the 1950s, the average family had a mother at home raising the children. Daddy was going to work to go and make a living. No, he was not at home farming and participating in the teaching of his children. He was not making a living on the land. The last time people in the United States made their living off the land was in the 1800s. Now, I'm not talking about the Amish or even about some Hasidic Jews, because they still, many of them, live off the land and work at home. Then the U.S. government decided that they did not have enough tax revenue, so they wanted to increase their tax base by convincing women that they should leave the home, hire a babysitter, send their children off to a consolidated public school, and compete with her husband as breadwinner. And so what we have here is a competition between men and women. So the man has no choice now But to go out there and make a living, and he better make sure that he makes more money than his wife does. Otherwise, she will go all hypergamy on him. So now man can't stop. Can't say, whoa, 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 something's wrong here. Emergency lights are going off inside my head. No. He became a slave to the system, and his wife became his slave master. Through competition and hypergamy. Well, I don't have that to be concerned about. I've learned to live off of little. I don't have a mortgage to worry about. I don't have car payments to worry about. So when the emergency lights start going on, I'm going to stop, read, and show you what is going on. If the pumping of Kiev regime for the most dangerous types of weapons continues, the military campaign will move to another level sooner or later. Visible boundaries and potential predictability of the party's actions to the conflict will disappear. It will follow its own military scenario, attracting new participants to it, writes Medvedev. At the end, the Kremlin jester, as this particular, why did he call him that? Makes no sense. But anyway, the Kremlin jester is traditionally scared, and it should read, of a nuclear war. This is a translation, by the way. Everything will flare up around them. He's speaking about NATO. Their people will seize grief to the fullest. Their earth will literally burn and concrete will melt. We will also get a lot. It will be bad for everyone, Medvedev added. Now, for some strange reason, they did not, and I don't understand why, they left out where he literally quoted Revelation 9 and verse 18. Maybe we should go there. So, the internet is scrubbing everywhere where he quoted Revelation 9 and verse 18. By these were the third part of men killed, by the fire, by the smoke, and by the brimstone, which issued out of their mouths. Now, I want to go ahead and go to Zero Hedge, and Zero Hedge added a little bit more. That still didn't add what Medvedev's last parting words on his statement. But we can read this article. Prologue to the Third World War. Kremlin reacts to security guarantees for Ukraine. Ukraine wants a NATO-esque bloc which can be called upon to immediately defend borders with Russia, which was proposed by a working group established by President Volodymyr Zelensky. Crucially, it would include the United States and NATO allies providing Ukraine with security guarantees. Kiev officials stressed it in unveiling the plan Tuesday, but it is not meant to be as a replacement for NATO, but as a legally binding alliance to be in place while Ukraine eventually pursues full NATO membership, as Newsweek describes as the proposal. So essentially what happened on Tuesday, 2 days ago, NATO proposed something to Ukraine, which would be essentially the same thing as a NATO guarantee. I say essentially, there's only one thing missing from it, and that's Article 5. But it's essentially the same thing as Article 5 without Article 5. And the Kiev Security Compact, proposed by Andrei Yermak, head of Zelensky's office, and former NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen, would also establish a multi-decade plan of investment, military training, and intelligence sharing to bolster Ukraine's defensive capabilities as the country pursues full NATO membership. And this is where Dmitry Medvedev responded. Okay? So he's saying the land will be on fire and the concrete will melt. You don't get a Mayday, Mayday going off in your head? You don't see the significance of this, folks? You see, folks, let me show you something. On YouTube and on BitChute, I posted videos proving who this Gog figure is and the perpetrator of the 6th trumpet plague. Right there in this video. How many views did I get? I bet 10 of them were from me. So probably 85 views. And yet, in this particular video, I proved that with the help of one of my listeners on YouTube, let me repeat myself, with the help of one of my listeners on YouTube, I used the scripture to prove that the one who carries the ribbon of St. George is going to be the one that unleashes the 6th trumpet sound plague. I strongly urge you to listen to this video, and I posted it on what date? What date do you see right here? April the 10th. How many months ago was that? 4 long months ago. Now, I'm not a prophet. I don't even pretend to be a prophet. I am just an uneducated, backwoods hillbilly living in the rural mid-Atlantic. That's all I am. Now, I've been posting videos for the last 8 years, mostly on YouTube, but I recently started doing BitChute, concerning the new covenant is for Israel, that the time of the Gentiles comes to the end. The Gentiles as a people will be rejected, Christian or not. And Israel will once again be saved. And once they are saved, they will learn righteousness once again. I know that goes against the false narrative of Christians, but your false narrative does not matter. You chose that false narrative because your preachers told you. Your preachers avoided Jeremiah 31 verses 31 through 34. Your preachers avoided Isaiah 60. Your preachers avoided Isaiah 24. Your preachers avoided Romans 11. Your preachers avoided Joel 2, Joel 3, Ezekiel 36, 37, 38, 39. Your preachers avoided Hosea. So that they could brainwash you with Cyril's 15th catechetical lecture about the so-called Antichrist. You see, they labeled Israel's real Messiah, Moshiach, as the Antichrist, because Cyril went totally opposite of what Paul said in Romans 11, especially in verse 25 and 26. Let's go there. Now, Jehovah never changed his name to Got or Gotaz. Got and Gotaz is the name of a one-eyed Cyclops idol of the Gauls, the Celts, the English, the Germans, and the Norsemen. Gog and Magog. So, has Jehovah cast away his people? No. Because I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. Jehovah has not cast away his people who he foreknew. Don't you know what the scripture says about Eliah? How he made intercession to Jehovah against Israel, saying, Adonai, they have killed your prophets and dig down your altars and left alone they seek my life. But what was the answer? I have reserved to myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal. Now, so, the same way it was at the Jews' rejection of the Moshiach. He did not even cast away his people then. Why does he have to argue with the Romans about this? If he's having to tell the Romans this, that means they believe that he did cast away his people. And in spite of Paul's insistence and continual pounding away at these Romans for their false beliefs, they refused to listen. And you have what we have here right now. at this present time, when judgment was going to come upon the house of Jehovah in Jerusalem, there is also a remnant according to the election of grace. So at that, in his day, because they rejected the Moshiach, there was still an election of grace according to individual Jews. Okay? The nation of Israel in those days had not obtained what it sought for, but the election still did. And the rest were blinded, according to Scripture. Okay? So Paul says in verse 11, have they stumbled that they should fall? No. But rather their stumbling, their false step, their trespass, open up a door to the salvation of Gentiles. But there's only one way the Gentiles can be saved. And you Gentiles, when you are faced with this truth, you reject it. And because you reject it, you will be rejected. Once again, as I've done so many times, I'll do it again today. I will show you how a Gentile can be saved. You must be grafted in to one of the branches of Israel. Salvation came to the Gentiles to provoke Israel to jealousy. Now, if the false step, the trespasses, be the wealth of the world, and look around you today, because of the false trespass of Israel, the world has seen, the Gentile world has seen wealth in excess. Blinding wealth. Blinding technology. So blinding that the people, the Gentiles, cannot see what is about to happen to them. Melted concrete. And if the diminishing of Israel became the wealth of the Gentiles, then how much Israel's fullness? How much is Israel's filling up? How much is Israel's completion? It'll be even more. Even more. I speak to you, Gentiles, because I am the apostle to the Gentiles. Now I magnify my office, if by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are of my flesh, and might save some of them at this time of judgment upon Israel. Because if the casting away, the rejection of Israel become the reconciling of the world, then what shall the receiving of Israel be but life from the dead? Checkmate. So at the time of the Gentiles' end, Israel is going to be raised from the dead, like the prophet Ezekiel said. Why? Because if the first fruit is holy, the lump, the tribes of Israel, are also holy. And if the root of Jesse is holy, then so are all 12 branches. Now if a man in those branches, listen carefully. See, I even had to learn something today. If a man, see it right there, among those branches is broken off, and you being a wild olive, not a wild olive tree, a wild olive, you'll see it right there. You were grafted in on, at, by, with the branches. And what? Partaking jointly of the root. But the problem is, you Romans, you rejected the branches and the root. You rejected the branches by trying to murder them and wipe them out over and over and over again, like Vespasian, Titus, and Hadrian did. You continued because you would not listen to Paul. And then on top of that, you rejected the Hashem Mephoresh, the explicit name. You did. Not only did you reject it, your church fathers claimed that the Jews got that name out of the insides of a swine, thereby making their own salvation null and void, and anyone who follows them, their salvation null and void. That's what you Christians did. You not only rejected partaking jointly with Israel, you rejected the Moshiach, and you rejected Hashem Mephoresh Abba. And the fatness of the olive tree, do not boast against the branches. And as I pointed out, and as history shows, the Romans not only boasted against the branches, they proceeded to attempt to wipe them out for 2,000 years. Because if you boast, you do not bear the root, but the root bears you. You will say then the branches were broken, that I might be grafted in. Because of unbelief, they were broken off, and you now stand by faith. Do not be high-minded, but fear. You became high-minded. You became the ecclesia. And you became this. You became this evil woman. Hold on. Let me get some more images up. You became this evil woman, ecclesia, opposing synagogue. You refused to share jointly with them. You persecuted them, raped, pillaged, and murdered them, whether they were in Jerusalem or whether they were scattered in your lands. You held up your scepter as kings and queens in your lands. You put a crown on your head. The kings and queens in your realms. And you had this golden cup in your hand. You Christians. And in that golden cup is the blood of the Jews. That's you, Christianity. That's what you did. You were high-minded and you did not fear. And he said, if Jehovah spared not the natural branches at all, He will not spare you either. So it's coming. The handwriting is on the wall in your language. The heir to the throne of Nebuchadnezzar did not have that luxury. He had to go find Daniel the prophet because Jehovah refused to communicate with the Babylonians in their language. What excuse do you have? You have it in your language, right in front of you. Look at the goodness and the severity of Jehovah on them, the Jews, which fell severity toward you goodness. If you continue in it, otherwise you will also be cut off. I showed you in the previous video, Isaiah 24. And they also, not if they abide, before. You see that? Before, they're no longer in unbelief. While they are still in unbelief, will be grafted back in because Jehovah is able to graft them in again. And if you were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and you were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, you Romans, how much more shall these 12 branches, which are the natural branches, be grafted back on into their olive tree? I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits. And you, O Christianity, Western civilization, you still, even after promising Israel in the Balfour Declaration all of Transjordan, you reneged on that promise. I did videos on that, multiples. You reneged on that promise because you wanted oil. Well, Western nations, soon you will no longer have oil. You will no longer have nuclear power. You will not even have solar power. Your lights will be turned off. Your cities will be melted concrete. And even though a fool from the backwoods of the mid-Atlantic can figure it out, you will not listen. You will not hear it. You will remain in your delusion, and you will suffer destruction for it. I would not, Roman brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that partial blindness happened to Israel until the Gentiles reached their total height, total fullness, as far as they can go. And what are the Gentiles going to do when they reach as far as they can go? Destroy each other. You can find it in Zechariah 14. You can find it in Haggai 2, verses 20 through 22. When the time of the Gentiles comes to the end, that's when they reached their total fullness. Let me show you something. And so all Israel shall be saved, because it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, who will turn unholiness from Jacob. So, Jacob is still going to be unholy when he comes, so that he can turn unholiness from Jacob. That is against the Christian false narrative, but you Christians, you won't listen. Why? Because this is my covenant. What covenant? The new covenant in Jeremiah 31 verses 31 to 34. Unto them when I will take away their sins. Concerning the gospel they might be enemies for the Romans' sakes, but concerning the election they are the beloved for the patriarchs' sakes. Now we go to Luke. I believe it's Luke. I need to move this over. Luke. Wait a minute. Luke 21. What happened to my... Oh, there it is. Luke 21. Alright, this is talking about... This is the tribulation upon Israel. Okay? This is the tribulation upon the Gentiles. So please follow along carefully. When you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, aka Titus, the Roman general, the son of Caesar, with armies, then you know its desolation is near. And by that time, those which were in Judea should have fled. Because if Jerusalem is surrounded, there's no way for them to get out. So when you see the armies coming from the north, they were supposed to go to the deserts, the mountains, and the south. Those of you who understand the geography of the Middle East, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Know that its desolation is nigh. Let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains in the south, and let them which are in the midst of it depart, and let not that are in the rural areas enter into Jerusalem. When did Vespasian send Titus? Just before Passover. They all had to go to Jerusalem. Of course, Titus knew this. That's the reason why he picked that day. Because these are the days of vengeance. Of vengeance on what? On Israel. That the things which are written may be fulfilled. So once that happened, it's fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child and those that give suck in those days, and there shall be great necessity, tribulation in the land of Israel, and wrath upon this people. And there was. The history books prove to you that there was, but there is not going to be any more. And they will fall by the edge of the sword, and they will be led away captive into all the Gentiles. The word ethnos is Gentiles. Gentiles, right here. And they were, and they still are. The vast majority of the Jews of two tribes, Benjamin and Yehuda, are still cast out, are still in the other Gentile nations. There's only a minority of Yehuda and Benjamin that are in the Holy Land. But that's going to change. When? When the Gentiles reach their pinnacle, which is right now. And at that time that the Gentiles reach their pinnacle, the tribulation on the Gentiles must begin. and led away captive into the Gentiles, and Jerusalem will be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles is fulfilled, complete, accomplished, complete, fulfilled. And fulfilled means finished, you see. Completed means finished. Now, and it also means at their pinnacle, filled to the top. Their wealth is filled to the top. But now you look around you and you see it's collapsing. Then this happens. The return of the Son of Man starts with this. Signs, portents in the sun, portents in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth, tribulation, distress, anguish, upon who? The Gentiles. Folks, a baby, a 6-year-old could understand this. That's right, an elementary school child could understand this. Why then don't you? Why is it so hard to understand? Delusion is the answer. I'll show you what Paul said about this. Now, if there's going to be tribulation upon the Gentiles, perplexity, the waves and seas roaring, men's hearts failing for fear, for looking after those things which are coming upon the earth, for the powers in the sky shall be shaken, and then they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and glory. And when you see these things come to pass, then you look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draws nigh. Well, if there is tribulation upon the Gentiles, whose redemption draws nigh? Israel's redemption draws nigh, just as Paul said in Romans 11. And so all Israel shall be saved. That's right. All, everyone. Sinner and righteous. It's Israel versus the Gentiles. And when the Gentiles had reached their height of wealth, their height of standard of living, it's going to happen. And you do not know that your mortgages blinds your eyes. You do not know that living in your gated communities, your HOAs and whatever, blinds your eyes. Now, I also proved to you in many videos, many videos, that the time of wrath upon Israel came to the end in 2016. We'll go to Daniel 9. And many of you will hear this and you will not listen because you prefer your false narrative. And I need to pull up another one, 2 Thessalonians . Because I need to do that one before I quit today. 2 Thessalonians 2. I got to make sure I do this one. Alright. Now, We'll start in Daniel 9. Daniel knew by the times and the season, 70 years had gone past in those days, that Jerusalem would be, the people would be brought back to Jerusalem. And so he set his face to Adonai Elohim, to seek by prayer and supplication with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. And I prayed unto Jehovah Elohim and made my confession, says Adonai, great and frightening, El, keeping the covenant and mercy to them that love him and to them that keep his commandments. We have sinned and has committed iniquity and have done wickedly and have rebelled by departing from your precepts and from your judgments. We did not listen to your servants the prophets, which spoke in your name. To our kings, our princes, and fathers, and to all the people of the land. And just like Israel did not listen, neither did the Gentiles. So how do the Gentiles think that they're going to escape wrath? So he says, Adonai, righteousness is yours, but shame and confusion of face today to the men of Yehudah, and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and to all Israel, all 12 branches, far and near, through all the countries where you have driven them because of their trespass. They have trespassed. Remember what Paul said in Romans 11? Adonai, confusion of face, belongs to the kings and the princes, to our fathers, because we have sinned against you. To Adonai Elohim, or from Adonai Elohim, comes mercy and forgiveness, for we have rebelled. Neither have we obeyed the voice of Jehovah Elohim, to walk in his Torah, which he set before us by his servants the prophets. Yes, all of Israel has transgressed your Torah by departing. They might so they would not hear your voice. And because of that, the curse of the oath is poured upon us, because they made an oath in front of Moshe. In Deuteronomy, is it 28:29? Unfortunately, the Gentiles did not read Deuteronomy 30, which is written in the Torah of Moses, the servant of Elohim, because we sinned against him, and now he has confirmed his words in the blessings and the cursings. Okay, we'll continue down here. So he is beseeching Jehovah concerning the prayer, which is concerning the times. He says somewhere in here about the times of the 70 weeks. Right here. And so, but it's the 7 weeks for Jerusalem in those days. Then comes 70, because another rebellion would occur, and the 70, the 7 weeks would be multiplied by 7. So he's telling Daniel here, 70 weeks are determined upon your people and upon your holy city, to finish the transgression and to make an end of sin, to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision, the prophecy, to anoint the Kodesh. The Kodesh is where the Temple Mount is, where the Holy of Holies was. That's what Kodesh means, the Holy of Holies. Therefore, understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the suffering servant. No, it does not say that. See what you Gentiles did? You came up with your own calculation, you came up with your own narrative so that the false narrative of Cyril would prevail. But the false narrative of Cyril will not prevail because the truth always prevails. And as I showed you, it is written, who made you ruler? Who made me ruler? Made me ruler and judge or divider over you. Luke 12 and verse 14. Let's look in Strong's Concordance. And you see verse 13, and one of the company said unto him, Master, speak to my brother that he divide the inheritance with me. And Yehoshua, not Jesus, said unto him, Man, who made me? Nope. He was not Messiah the Prince at that time. He was the suffering servant of the prophet Isaiah. Who made me a judge or a divider over you? I am not your judge. I am not your prince. I am not your divider. Not even an arbiter. But he is now. But he hasn't come yet as the arbiter, as the judge, as the prince. So then, that means this. From the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem, not the street and the wall. No, to build Jerusalem. There was a call made to rebuild Jerusalem. It occurred when the Israelis defeated the Arabs in the 1967 war. I have posted over and over and over and over again the words of Shlomo Goren, and I'll do it again. Unto Moshiach the Prince shall be 7 weeks. Not 7 weeks plus 62 weeks. Because it says right here, the street and the wall will be built in troublous times. Does not say Jerusalem will be rebuilt in troublous times. It says the street and the wall will be built in troublous times, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. So the 62 weeks is separate in time from the 7 weeks. The 1 week here has already been done. It's already finished. It's already finished. The one who perpetrated this 1 week was Titus. Titus made a mighty covenant with his legions. What was it? The covenant was for 1 week to besiege the city for 7 years. But because of the resistance of the Jews, the provocation against the Romans were so great that the Romans broke through the walls. Titus lost control of his men. Titus was going to carry each piece of the temple to the Roman, what do you call that? No, I forgot. Back to Rome and have it as a souvenir for all all the other temples of all the other nations were taken to. But they burned it down against the will of Titus, the general. But you won't read history because you are high-minded. You don't want to learn the truth. And so now this is going to happen to you. You believe the false narrative, and the name is not Jesus Christ, the name is Yehoshua. But you replaced that name, you rejected that name, you rejected the truth for a lie by following King James Version and other versions. That you be not soon shaken in mind, neither by trouble in spirit, nor by word, nor by letter from us, as the day of the Messiah is at hand. Do not let any man deceive you by any means, because that day will not come before the great revolt. Not falling away, the great revolt. Read it, read it. It says revolt, and the revolt occurred shortly after Paul said this. See, there are people going around telling the Thessalonians that any minute now the Moshiach will come. And Paul saying, no, 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 don't do that. Revolt, that that man of sin be revealed. That the man of sin be revealed, the son of destruction. Who was that? Well, it started with the man who called himself a god, Caligula. I showed it to you over and over again. Who exalts himself all that is called a god, or that is worshipped, so that he as a god sits in the temple of Jehovah. And he did. Just like his forebearer, the Greek, Antiochus IV, or Antiochus IV. This is what Caligula did. He did it. Declaring himself that he is a god. Don't you remember I was with you, I told you these things? But you Romans today, you Christians, you don't even believe it now. And because you don't believe the truth, this is coming to you. And I showed you several videos back who it was who withheld. There is even a name for this guy, the one who withheld. I showed it to you. That he might not be revealed before his time. Because the mystery of iniquity is going to wait until the end of time. Is that what it says? Nope. The mystery of iniquity is already at work. Right now. It's happening right before their eyes nearly 2,000 years ago. But you won't believe that because you don't want to believe the truth. So I'll continue and I'll show you what happens to those of you who refuse to believe the truth but rather believe the lie. Until he's taken out of the way. And then shall that lawless, doesn't say lawless person, this doctrine of lawlessness will be revealed, will be exposed. And today, what happened there led to what is happening now. Doctrine of lawlessness, where men think they can marry women, women think they can marry men, men think they can transition themselves into women, and women deluding themselves into thinking they can transition themselves into men. That wickedness will be revealed, that wickedness which the Moshiach will consume with the word of his mouth and will destroy with the brightness of his coming. Not even him. It does not say even him. It says demonstrative this. A presence, a coming that is after the working of Satan with all power, the time of the Gentiles, the filling up by Satan. With all power, nuclear power, melting concrete power, portents and lying wonders. The lying wonder is that in the West, people are able to borrow money and live in such a way that they cannot afford in the most fancy houses, gated communities, HOAs they'll never be able to afford in their lifetime, so they borrow money. And what happens is property value increases, accumulates, and you can trade back and forth, making money that way until the house of cards collapses. With all deceivableness of unrighteousness and injustice. And my, oh my, oh my, it has come to the fool. Yes, folks, the time of the Gentiles has come to the fool. And so we go back, before we go back, it's because of this, Jehovah will send strong delusion. Why? Because of why? With all deceivable of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. They did not love Paul's warning in Romans 11. And because they didn't, he sent them strong delusion that they should believe the lie, which is exactly what's happening right before our eyes. The great lie. So that they all might be, so that every one of them might be damned, who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Take a look around you. Because you would not believe Paul in Romans 11, you were given over to this. And so that Jehovah could find out who would resist this evil, believe in the grafting of the Gentiles in the branches of Israel, as it is written in Romans 11, and to pray for Zion's king to return to Israel, so that they may be grafted in like Ruth, like Rahab, okay? Like Ruth and Rahab. That's how the Gentiles are to be grafted in. But the Gentiles, they want all Israel brought back to the Holy Land so that the Antichrist can come. And they will fight against him. That is what the Gentile narrative is. So now, to end the part of Daniel 9, where it says, build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks. 7 sevens are what? 49. From the going forth of the commandment to restore and build, not the street and the wall, but Jerusalem. Can we find that commandment? Sure we can. Shlomo Goren, right here in the Jewish Virtual Library. The 6-Day War. That's when the call was made to rebuild Jerusalem like the Jerusalem of old. You don't believe it? All right, let's have a look. Right way down here. This is after the prayer, which is right here. He made this announcement. He said, Lashana Hazat Be'Yerushalayim Habnuya Be'Yerushalayim Ha Atika. Translation. This translation is only a broken translation. In this year, a rebuilt Jerusalem in the Jerusalem of old. What it means is, beginning this year, we will rebuild Jerusalem like the Jerusalem of old. That was the day the countdown began. And it ended in the Roman year of 2016, and I often told my listeners on these videos that was the year that Donald Trump got elected, and the whole purpose of his election was the peace plan of the century. What did they call that? The Abraham Accords. And I've gone over that so often, folks, and even you Gentiles claim that would be the one. You said that would be it. You said that the one who brought that, the Abraham Accords, would be your Antichrist. Just goes to show how far off the track you guys were. And now, just a few short years later, the former president of Russia saying everything will flare up around them. Their people will seize grief to the fullest. Their earth will literally burn and concrete will melt. We will also get a lot. It's going to happen to us too, he said. And he's right. It will be very bad for everyone. And so, folks, I showed you in April of this year, the ribbon of St. George identifies Gog and the perpetrator of the 6th trumpet plague. And now you have the former president of Russia confessing that that's exactly what Russia is going to do. Now I need to go to this particular one. Let's see here. It would be Haggai 2. If you bother to read the whole chapter, you will see that on that day, the 24th day of the 9th month, that would be the day before Hanukkah. That's the day he chose to liberate Israel. That is the day he chose to say, come out of her Babylon, Israel my people, and be not partaker of her Babylon's sins. That's the day. It also appears, but it may or may not be correct, that the fighting against everyone by the sword of his brother also happens on that day. I still think it does. But I want you to understand this one thing. Rosh Hashanah is coming up in just a few days. I believe it is on the 23rd or 24th or somewhere like that in the Roman calendar, September 23rd, 24th, which would be about 10 days away. And it is my opinion that the trumpet sounds happen on Rosh Hashanah. I hope you're ready.